Sir, I'd like to go look for them.
You would?
We're talking about a Taishokoto that could be my future partner.
Just remember, if you find them, you need to crouch down so you can talk to them at eye level. You should be able to calm them down.
Okay, I'll do that.
Good girl.
Wait, what?
I wish you luck.
Thanks?
The days of digital synthesis were still early and analog synths ruled. Though the synthesis done by devices from Kawashima Sangyo were simple, they were no slouch. Kawashima Sangyo released the Showa Koto in 1980. Now 1980 is really impressive. This was quite the trendsetter as far as synthesizers and Taishokoto go. Showa Koto here is meant to be a play on the Showa era versus the Taisho era for the Taishokoto, so it's saying it's a more advanced Taishokoto. It has 3 strings, 28 buttons, a built-in kickstand, a built-in bottom speaker, no top resonator, and works off adapter or battery. The key feature of this Taishokoto is that it has the Taishokoto sound with the option to turn on a built-in organ sound. This effect can be subtle or extreme. On the left side you have a knob to adjust the pitch of the organ, and on the right side the volume mixed with the Taishokoto. There's actually also a small little knob on the bottom to further tune the organ if it's super far out. Now the Taishokoto sound requires that you actually play, but the organ does have a keyboard mode so that you can just press the notes and it'll play the organ sounds. This original model also has a vibrato switch and an optional built-in tuner, which is the fancier model. One other thing to note about the organ sound is this is an analog synth, not sample based, and that's true of this early model and the later model. The later model was mostly of the same with some slight changes. We moved from quarter to 8-inch jack, used different electric pickups, and the newer model also got rid of cushioning on the bottom of the keys, which is interesting. The cushioning generally keeps out the tinging sound when you push down the keys. This is characteristic to the Taishokoto, so apparently that was a desired effect they wanted. In a high-end expensive model like this, it doesn't make sense for this to be a cost optimization. Another interesting point is that when you use the jack, the external amp is still on, so that was a desired effect and a conscious decision for both models. Now, more recent pricing for the newer model was 80,000 yen without a tuner and 90,000 with. This is actually pretty recent too. Up until very recently, you could go to their site and get instrument samples, demo songs, and even buy leftover models. That site is unfortunately down as of a couple months ago. Luckily, there is one YouTuber who has both these models, so I'll show you a demo clip from his channel. So next we get to talk about Suzuki, and I think it's interesting to have a little context here. In 1938, Manji Suzuki joined Kawai Musical Instruments at age 15. He was just a kid who really enjoyed playing harmonica at the time and wanted to learn how to make them. He did eventually have to go join the war, but when he came back in 1945, he went back to Kawai to continue musical manufacturing. Eventually 1953 rolls around and he says, hey, I need to go pursue my own visions. This was the year he started the Suzuki Musical Instruments Manufacturing Company. He started this company for two main reasons. He wanted to innovate off the norm, and he wanted to educate. As we actually talked about in part 1 of the documentary, he had a lot of different schools for teaching kids music. His main instrument he pushed was the harmonica because it's what he loved. To drive home this educational school aspect, I think it's interesting to look at the marching line. There are actually whole sets of keyboards that were made specifically for marching with, and lots of gear dedicated to marching bands. On the innovation front, however, in 1961 he introduced the melodica line. This was a weird combo keyboard harmonica flute thing. With these things in mind, when you think Suzuki instruments, generally they go towards education or weird.
Taishokoto.
The Suzuki Waraku. Waraku here means Japanese music. This device also has two numerical names, the TES-100 and TES-101. These two different versions are the same, neither is better, and we already have to detour, which should tell you how poorly documented and confusing these get. There's a couple different confounding factors on the different devices, but none of which actually point to the 100 versus the 101. You may notice slightly different color tones, but those can exist on both versions. You might also notice some writing on top. This again can exist in both versions, and when in percussion mode, this is just telling you which keys correspond to which instrument. The only differences between the two is the production date. I can show you the serial numbers for a 100 version versus a 101, and you'll see the 101s come much later. Now as for release date, I've seen people report 1989, but have seen no source for this info. I have, however, found proof it was at least on the market in 91 though, which is promising, so I'm just giving a range of 89 to 91. Easy one first, the MIDI implementation in the documentation shows version 1 1991. But for benefit of the doubt, I wanted to dig deeper to see if I could find something earlier. There was a journal released monthly in Japan that started in 1987. It's called Hogaku Journalu. They have articles on Japanese instruments, and companies which are related to Japanese instruments would often pay for ad space in the magazine. I obtained and read through all the issues released since 1987, and the first mention of the Waraku appeared in the issue from November 1991. It makes more sense to me that if you're going to see a single ad across many years, it's probably at the release date, but I can still accept 89 as a possibility. So I'll pop up the ad here. It's always fun to see how a device was originally advertised. The Waraku was sold with the intention of giving the user easy access to traditional Japanese instruments. And keep in mind, some traditional instruments actually can be tough to get and play even within Japan. Of course, other synthesizers at the time had potential for these instruments, but it's nice to have one instrument dedicated to Japanese instruments. In addition, the ad also states that you can now play at night because you can use headphones and not wake your neighbors. And then there's a nice push for the keyboard mode, because you can play this in keyboard mode or much like a Taishokoto with your pick. You can see this was originally sold for 125,000 yen. You can actually see on the Suzuki website that later models were sold for 137,500 yen. Really not that much higher. The device had 16 voices, all of Japanese sounds and instruments that I'll pop up here now. Note one of them is the percussion mode we mentioned earlier. We have no built-in speaker, MIDI out but no MIDI in, a pitch wheel, and an octave button. On the top right, you can also see 4 drum pads. The drum pads can be set at any time to any of the sounds in the percussion mode. Then we have a button to switch between picking like a Taishokoto and entering the keyboard mode to just hit the notes. In keyboard mode, the plucking will not work. Also note the device has velocity sensitivity. This velocity sensitivity only exists for the Taishokoto mode and the drum pads, not the keyboard mode. This has 2 nice features to it. The velocity will show up per string in the MIDI output, and also when vibrato is on, the note will add vibrato proportional to the velocity you use. Now there's some other cool little features kind of related to Taishokoto performance. There's a button to stop the 5th string from working so you don't have to worry about hitting it while performing. This is nice because the bottom string is the drone string. Sometimes you may not want that while playing. You also have the ability to tune that drone string so it doesn't have to be the bass G. On the note of upkeep, yes, you can replace the strings as shown in the user manual, and you can still get the strings through the Suzuki repair shop in Japan. Also, you'll see a lot of people report peeling of the wood grain covering. Yes, it's a sticker, not real wood, sorry to disappoint, and yes, the peeling is a real issue. It happens on most of them in the same spots on the sides, so don't be too disappointed if you see it. And as a final note, if you ever need a reminder to not chuck your device on the ground while pouring drinks on it, Suzuki has got you covered. Now there's too much to cover everything here in this video, but I'll give a quick demo of the basic sounds and features of the device. Next we have the Suzuki Nobara TES 370, which was released in 1995. Nobara translates as wild rose, so you'll see a rose on this device. This time we have a major shift to look like a keyboard instead of a Taishokoto, though we retain the strings on the right side so you can still pluck away. This isn't the first time a Taishokoto has had the even keyboard button spacing, but it is the first time it's had keyboard keys. So having exhausted the Hogaku journal, I went in search of Taishokoto specific magazines. And lo and behold, I find Taishokoto Roman from 1995. On the very first page inside cover is an ad for the Nobara. There are a couple selling points in the ad. One is people who want to mix Western music and Japanese music. The next is access to the bass notes, aka we have an octave switch and lower instruments, so you don't necessarily need to reach as far as you do on a bass Taishokoto. And then the ad specifically states this is not just for Taishokoto enthusiasts, but also for piano enthusiasts. It details the voices, the drums, the fact that you don't need to tune the instrument, and then finally goes over the price. Back in the heyday, this was 94,000 yen with the soft case and 98,000 yen with the hard case. As you might expect, there's still a button to switch between keyboard and plucking mode, and in keyboard mode there's still no plucking loud. We also still have an octave button, a key change slider, and assignable drum pads. There's still the same velocity sensitivity, which is limited to the plucking mode and drum pads, not the keyboard mode. The only lost features from the Waraku are the ability to tune just the drone string and to turn just the drone string off. As for the important new features, we have a built-in speaker as well as both MIDI in and out. As a note, the MIDI in and out both support playing with all of the voices, including the percussion. Overall, these are more rare than the Waraku, but not insanely so. There is, however, a version which is extremely rare and I've never seen one in the wild. It's a metallic purple model that has a flip-over cover. The cover has percussion names mapped to keys, much like the mapping seen on some of the Waraku models. In addition, rather than Nobara, the side says New Harp. Let's go ahead and take a look at a demo of some of the voices and features of the device. Next up we have the Waraku III, subname Waraku no Hibiki, with numerical title TES371. First we had the Waraku, then the Nobara is essentially number 2, and now 3. As for the subname, Waraku no Hibiki means the sound of Japanese music. Some early models, however, had Suisen 37 printed on the front instead. Suisen there means daffodil, so another type of flower to follow up on the Nobara. The Nobara came out in 1995, so how long did it take for this follow-up? You can actually see in the MIDI implementation page there's a version 1 marked with 2001. It's a good indicator, but I was kind of curious because of the earlier Suisen version if there was maybe a pre-release, so I dug a little deeper. I spent quite a bit of time trolling through old Japanese blog posts hoping to find something, and eventually I did. I found exactly one blog from a true hero in Japan who likes synthesizers. In 2001, they made a single post about going to a synthesizer trade show. The post is a little barren, but they write about things being exciting because they're not yet in stores. It has some pictures of company booths pushing their new products, one of which was the Akai MPC series with the MFC42 filter. Now this, on the other hand, has better documentation and was released in 2001, supporting the claim that these are all new products. In the picture, you can see a golden Waraku III at a Suzuki display, which means we have a 2001 release date. We kind of knew this, but it's fun to see what people think at the time. From this, you've also now noticed there's a gold and a silver version. The serial number on the back is marked with a G or S to match this. And no, there is no difference between them other than the fact that
I love gold!
the price is still listed on the Suzuki website as 98,000 yen base price, and this price is true for both models as shown by this ad. From here we can get into the nitty-gritty. This model sports a built-in keyboard with 37 keys, 64 tones, and 44 drum sounds. If you're looking at the instrument list and wondering how, through the menu you can select sub-instruments, which are variations of the instruments, aka an electric versus acoustic Taishokoto, or sometimes different playing techniques for an instrument. One might be the instrument played with a forward pluck and the other with a back pluck. Yet again we have an octave switch, though this one covers multiple octaves. We still have 4 assignable drum pads with velocity sensitivity, but now we have a setting for the drum hit volume. The screen will display the hit amount for you to give you an idea how hard you're hitting it. There's a port for expression pedal input, and the screen also shows you the amount of expression you're currently pedaling. In addition, you can plug in an external drum kit and play the drums through that. We still have the same replaceable cordoned off strings for Taishokoto mode. They're still velocity sensitive, but now there's a setting for how sensitive they are. There's still a button to switch between Taishokoto and keyboard mode, of course. There's a mono poly setting for the instruments. For vibrato speed settings, the Hichiriki, no flute, and kokyu all have portamento, and all settings can be saved on board. We have MIDI in, but we do lose MIDI out. There's a full MIDI chart for the channels controlling expression, instruments, drums, etc. It also covers that certain instruments don't work at the same time through MIDI. And with all that, let's move into a demo of some of the basics.
Wait, Pikakoto, what's happening? Whoa, Pikakoto evolved!
It seems that Pikakoto's evolution was one of the legendaries this entire time.
Taicho, the legendary Taishokoto, created by Suzuki Musical Instruments in 1995, compact and with a panel-like keyboard to attract an evolving market of synthesizer enthusiasts.
Fascinating. The evolution of Taishokotos goes in so many different directions, but it has become abundantly clear there is still much we do not know. For instance, should I worship this Taishokoto?
That's kind of a weird leap to make.
Ash, I need you to continue in your search. We've gotten reports from the Kalos region that there is an as-yet undiscovered Taishokoto wandering around.
Now that's something I can help with.